The February 24th meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission will now come to order. It will be the process this evening to call for items on the agenda. The commission will hear briefly from staff first, then the applicant and/or their representative, and then open the public hearing when we get to that portion of the agenda, and hear from those in favor and/or in opposition to the request. When you come to the podium, please clearly state your name and address for the record. Then before closing the public hearing, both staff, the applicant, and/or their representative will be provided an opportunity to respond, to provide additional information, and answer questions. After all interested parties have spoken, the public hearing will be closed, and we will hear closing remarks and alternatives from staff. The first item on the agenda is under general orders, and we shall hear from staff on the first item, which is the final plat, SUB 25-12.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Henry Biebelheimer with Development Services, and tonight we're looking at a final plat for the Stillwater High School Edition. This is addressed at 410 West Franklin Avenue. The final plat, as shown here, outlined in pink on the aerial. This is on the east side of Boomer, just north of Franklin, which is on the north side of the existing high school facility. You see that high school football field right here. As you can see behind that purple outline, this is a previous shopping center that has been torn down. If you were to drive by this site today, we'll just skip to the street view. As you can see on the street view, the high school is currently under construction on this site, so this is the final plat there. So going back to the zoning, this property is Zone P or public. That zoning is also to the north and to the south. To the west, we have RMI, which is residential multifamily intermediate, as well as CG or commercial general. To the east of the site, we have RSS or small lot single family residential, as well as RSS PUD along Husband there. This is that street view we looked at it from a second ago. This is on Franklin looking north, kind of northeast on the site. As you can see, that existing high school construction. This is the final plat that we're approving tonight. It has two lots as well as two outlots, which are shown better in this next exhibit. We have lot 1, which is the primary lot for the high school. We have lot 2, which is an additional buildable lot, and we have outlots A and B. These are called outlots because they're not buildable lots. So we have outlot A and B. If you're familiar with the site, we have Kamioka Trail, which is a city trail that runs along the east. That trail is covered by these two outlots. I'm open to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the commissioners? I'll just inquire about timing. This is coming to the point where the building construction is nearing completion, and so I think I would have expected to have seen this a little bit earlier. So could you elaborate on the timing?
Yes, ma'am. It is normally standard that we do the platting process before the building permit. That started before I started, so I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm going to let David jump in.
Good evening, David Barth, Development Services Director. So as part of this project, they had to construct public improvements. They had to construct a water line and a sewer line through their site. So with most developments, we don't accept the final plat or take the final plat for acceptance to Planning Commission or City Council until those improvements are done and ready for acceptance. Those improvements couldn't be completed and ready for acceptance until they had the manholes to grade in the parking lot or the hydrants set to grade or all those. So they're just now finishing those public improvements. Even though some of those water lines and sewer lines may have been installed a year ago, they couldn't finalize them and have them ready for acceptance until they got closer to being finished. So that's why the plat is before you at this time, which seems a little bit, late in the game, especially since the building's almost done, but those are the reasons why.
So it's out of sequence for what we typically see, but not necessarily out of sequence for the required portions of work to be in place for the final plat to go through.
Yes.
I suspected that was the reason, but I just wanted to confirm.
Yep, that's the reason.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. We shall hear from staff as to findings and alternatives.
Yes, ma'am. Our findings tonight are that the proposed final plat meets the subdivision and zoning requirements, and Vision Stillwater 2045 recommends public uses at this location. Your alternatives tonight are to recommend that City Council approve, deny, or table this request. Staff recommends alternative number 1, which is to accept findings and recommend that City Council approve the proposed final plat as presented.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to accept the findings as presented in the staff report and recommend that City Council approve the final plat for Stillwater High School Edition, SUB 25-12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is to consider a request for a final plat, SUB 25-22, and we shall hear from staff.
Yes, ma'am. Our next plat is for a final plat for Fern Street Cottages. This is located at 505 East 18th Avenue. Here's the aerial view of the property where you can see it once again outlined in pink. This property is about a quarter-mile west of Perkins, north of 19th Avenue. And if you can see this large structure right here, just to the north of the site, that's Habitat for Humanity. So this is just south of that Habitat for Humanity site. And to the west, we can see that mobile home park existing there, west of the site, north of 19th. So the zoning on the property, to the north, where that Habitat for Humanity is, we have industrial lights. To the west, we have RMH, which is residential mobile home. And to the east, where we have those houses, we have RT, residential 2-family. This property itself is zoned RSS PUD, which is residential small lot, single family residential. I said residential a few times, but PUD is planned unit development. Here's the street view. This is from 19th looking north. So as you can see kind of in the distance, we have that Habitat for Humanity. And then over on the right side of your screen, we see those houses. That's in that RT zoning. This was when the infrastructure was getting put into place. If you were to look at the site now, it's a little further along as all that infrastructure has been accepted by the city, which is why we're before you with the final plat. Here is the final plat that we're looking at tonight. This is 14 residential lots. Outlot A, once again, is not a buildable lot. That's the common space for this community, primarily for parking. All of the lots in this development are done to meet the PUD or planned unit development. That was approved back in April of 2021. That PUD or planned unit development or preliminary PUD was also the preliminary plat. May of 2021, the PUD was approved by City Council. And then earlier last year, which is not the right way to say that, last year we came back before you with a new preliminary plat. There were no changes to that, but since the preliminary plat from 2021 was expired in July of 2025, you guys reapproved that preliminary plat. It does align with the final plat as presented. And I'm open to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, we'll ask staff to present findings and alternatives.
Yes, ma'am. The findings tonight is that the proposed final plat matches the preliminary plat and the PUD, which was originally approved in 2021. Your alternatives tonight are to once again recommend the City Council approve or deny this request, or decide that more discussion is needed and table it. Staff is recommending alternative number 1, which is to accept findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed final plat as presented.
I move we accept the findings and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed final plat as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Motion passes 5-0. We'll now move into the public hearing portion of the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is a map amendment, MA 25-16, and we shall hear from staff.
Yes, ma'am. Tonight we have a map amendment. This is located at 799 West 12th Avenue. This is to rezone from small lot single family residential or RSS and A or agriculture to commercial general. Here's an aerial of the property. Once again, we can see it outlined in pink. There's a few large structures that I'll point out here. Just to the west of this site, we have Stillwater Medical Center Southern Campus. So this property is located just south of 12th. And on the north side of 12th is where we have that public park and dog park. So here's the street view. This is from 12th Street looking south. So that vacant land is what we're looking at rezoning today. Here's the zoning map where you can see there's a kind of line halfway through. The northern side of that is zoned RSS or small lot single family residential, which is what we're looking at rezoning today. This was originally zoned RSS or small lot single family residential because it was platted as part of the Linz addition. The southern portion of this property is unplatted and zoned A or agriculture. As we can see, the southern portion here. This curvy line on the very southern is because of Stillwater Creek abuts this property on the south. To the west, we have P or public, as well as some O or office as a part of that Stillwater Medical Campus. To the north, we have P or public for that park, and to the east, we have some P for public, as well as some RSS or small lot single-family residential. Here's the future land use map from Envision Stillwater 2045 that calls for this property to be public and civic. Public and civic is property owned by the city. As we can see, the Stillwater Public Library has the same comprehensive plan designation. As this is not proposed to be owned by the city, this is not necessarily in line with that. But since it's being done as a partnership with the city, this is aligned with the comprehensive plan. Here's the conceptual site plan where we can see the proposed YMCA building. It's a very large site, so it looks like a small structure. It is larger than it looks. So we have the YMCA structure right here. Let me get my pointer. So for the conceptual site plan, the reason we're rezoning tonight is for this proposed YMCA development. The YMCA development falls under the use category of recreation. Recreation is not allowed in RSS or A, which is why we're rezoning it to CG or commercial general. Here's a rough look at what is being proposed. We have the YMCA structure right here with all of the proposed parking to the south. There's also some other conceptual expansions that are shown here. You can see some future additions shown here, as well as a proposed soccer facility. That's not necessarily being proposed to be built right now, but that is showing why the rezoning expands into this tail down here and to the south here. The south here is the borrow pit, which is being used to develop this site, which is largely in floodplain. And then again, we have a proposed future expansion here, which is the youth rec center and the parking that goes with that. I'm open to answer any questions if you have any.
Could you go back and show the graphic that indicates where the floodplain is? The other one. After that. There. I think the hatch. Does the hatch not indicate the floodplain? The blue hatch?
You might be correct. I did not confirm that. Yes, it does. You're right. Floodplain here. Yes, the blue hatch is the floodplain.
Okay.
And to clarify for everyone looking, the blue hatch kind of goes around right here.
And could you tell us, is that 100-year, 300-year floodplain? Do we know which line that is?
I believe that's the 100-year floodplain.
Yeah, what you're seeing there is the 100-year floodplain. There is floodway that's probably shown. The comp plan map doesn't differentiate between floodplain and floodway. They just call it all floodplain.
And I think I looked at this earlier today. I think that the floodway is probably all to the south of what's in gray.
Yes.
So is the portion that's in gray, how much of this are we looking at again to rezone?
I'm not sure he broke that out, just that part.
Okay.
So that's the portion that we're looking at rezoning. The gray ends right here on the comprehensive plan. So to kind of compare those maps, this is the line for the gray.
So it's the
right
difference
here.
between what's already zoned agriculture and what's RSS is the difference there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
See, this is that curve of
So
the
I
southern
have
tail.
a question, kind of point of order here. So if I have questions about changes to the floodplain, changes in the floodplain, earth change permit, all of that kind of thing, where's the best place for me to ask it? Is it here, or is it when we talk to the applicant?
Yeah, I mean, we can address just the city regulations in terms of, what they're proposing and what we've reviewed. The applicant's engineers here, they can also probably answer those questions very well. So depends on your question.
Okay. So philosophically, I have issue developing in the floodplain.
Okay.
Given my history in Stillwater, I've seen this area flood, and I know that there have been a lot of controls placed around and a lot of improvement done on the drainage way in Stillwater, and it's an ongoing issue that has to be kept up and maintained. but I have great pause to go in and change a floodplain to something commercial when, as a planning commissioner, I feel like that's better served to be public land or agricultural. So I would like to know what is being done to mitigate flooding of properties and, just different things about that
Right.
is what I'd like to know. And so we can, whatever the city can address here, we can address here, and then when we open it up for the applicant, then the applicant can
Yeah,
address
so
the
I
others.
can just say that, they submitted a flood study and a detention study for this site, and we sent that to WSB Engineering, who is our third-party consultant who reviews drainage studies for us, especially on larger things like this. There were comments. The engineer and their team addressed all of those comments. They're not removing the site from the floodplain. It will still be in the floodplain, but they are elevating this site by providing compensatory
the building
storage.
pad. The building pad they're
Right.
elevating?
Yes. Yeah, the building pad will be, if you look at the medical center facilities to the west.
Yeah,
it will be
it's also in the floodplain, yeah.
It's in the floodplain, but they've elevated those pads. I believe that I'll let the engineer confirm this, but I believe they're shooting for 2 foot above the base flood elevation. Our code just requires that you have the finished floor 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So they're providing compensatory storage to the south in that area that's closer to Stillwater Creek. Like I said, we've looked at, they looked at adverse impacts to upstream or downstream people, properties, not people, but properties.
People also
I understand.
get in the middle of this.
Well, that's
yeah.
true, yes. So I do understand, I do understand your concerns. I understand anyone who has concerns about building in the floodplain. And that's why we definitely took a look at this very closely. We've all seen what happened in 2019 where that medical center facility is surrounded by water. And so if this were, when they add this fill, they're providing compensatory storage to the south there. This is predominantly this is all backflow coming out of Stillwater Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to fill in that compensatory storage, which there's a similar compensatory storage area just south of the medical center facilities and those soccer fields that they built behind it there. So it's being developed in the same fashion. I will just say that we challenged the engineer and our reviewer with making sure that every I was dotted and T was crossed to make sure that this was not going to create an issue because, there's going to be, recreational facilities for kids and families and everything else inside this YMCA. So.
You've answered my question. Is there
Okay.
other questions?
What were these T's that were crossed and I's that were dotted?
Well, I guess I'm speaking just,
No, I
Yeah,
understand that, but what was under consideration that led them to believe that building this facility at this location would not open it up to risks of flooding?
Yeah, I can't speak to why the location was picked. My department reviews the plans that's put in.
So could you elaborate on like what the city looks for when they're looking at this in a regulatory viewpoint, as far as what are the regulatory items that you're looking for in the reports that would give the city the viewpoint that this is a good development?
Right. I'm just speaking from the drainage perspective, or I'm trying to.
Speaking from the drainage perspective, yes.
What makes this a good idea, or
What makes it an acceptable idea?
okay, an acceptable idea? The bar that our code says, which is really close, probably follows exactly what state law says, is that, your development can have no adverse impact on surrounding properties, period.
Correct.
And that that now the flow rate that's leaving your site, the post queue or the flow rate that's post-development is not supposed to exceed the pre-development. This is a unique situation because they did a timing study to show that it's better to let this flow out now in that channel rather than wait for the big storm to flow down the Stillwater Creek and then it combine with that it's better to let this water out now. So they're not providing on-site detention with this YMCA. And there are locations where that is advantageous. And I can't speak to, all of the details of their study. I can just tell you that they did what we asked them to do.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. At this point, we'd allow the applicant to come forward and elaborate a little bit, if you would, please.
Good evening. My name is Austin Burton, civil engineer of record on the project with Kimley Horn and Associates, representing the Y and Ed Gallegos on this property. Maybe just to add to what Mr. Barth has said as far as what's the bar in regards to flood studies. So our firm not only providing the civil engineering design for the project, but also providing the flood study. It's an area of expertise for our office out of Oklahoma City, as well as support from our Houston offices that do this work routinely in that setting where entire cities are in floodplains. So this is a challenging site, but maybe to explain one term that Mr. Barth used a couple times, compensatory storage. What that means is that any fill that any places we raise the site, for instance, the building pad is being raised about 9 feet above existing grades. So the building will be 9 foot above the current elevations in the building pad area. Any fill that we add can't be brought in to the property. So the borrow pit that, if we could, I don't know if it's possible to skip forward the site plan. Thanks, Henry. Okay. This large area that you see is the borrow pit. You can see it's larger than the YMCA portion of the site itself.
Can you
Yeah, sure.
elaborate
So
what that is, please?
It's this kind of boundary here. Sorry, I'm a little.
And is that located in the floodway?
No, it's not.
The borrow pit is not in the floodway?
By state regulation and city code, we can't do anything in the floodway.
Could you show me where the floodway is?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the floodway boundary
So
here.
that's the edge of the floodway boundary, so
That's
this
right.
is all
That's correct. The
outside of
floodway
that.
would all be south of that,
Okay.
that line. This drawing doesn't very well illustrate the center of the creek, but it more or less follows that floodway boundary, and it is kind of down in this area. You can kind of see actually the bow of the creek there.
Okay.
But yes, so we remain entirely clear of the floodway. So the only work that's being done there is actually a drain pipe out of the borrow pit to connect to the creek. So there's no other fill or earth change in the floodway itself.
So on your borrow pit,
Yep.
what is the elevation of the borrow pit comparative to the floodway?
So as you can imagine, well, if you were to imagine the entire property is flat, which is actually pretty accurate, being a floodplain area, existing conditions. At the building site, we're raising 9 feet.
So what do you know what that elevation is?
Yeah, 869.
869?
I'm going to pull out my drawings to
No, it's okay.
give you, make sure, fact check myself. That's correct. And existing elevations largely across the site are an 860.
Okay.
So that's that 9
So,
foot.
so roughly 860 is your,
existing condition.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were to think of it as a profile.
and then is 860 the elevation of the floodplain?
No, the floodplain elevation is 865.7.
865.7, so you're going to need to be 869.7 to be 4 feet above.
Or the code
Okay, why is
requires
1
1
foot?
foot above, and we're
Gotcha.
going 2
Okay.
foot and 3 inches.
Gotcha.
Or 4 inches.
Okay.
Yep. So then, for context, the bottom of the borrow pit So now if we're thinking we're raising the YMCA, right now they're currently digging the borrow pit out, and the bottom of it is 849. So it's a significant cut in that area. So there'll be no import fill for the project. All the soils for raising the pad are being sourced on site. So that's when Mr. Barth talks about compensatory storage. That is the bar that is set by the city, by the state statute for work to be by FEMA for work to be completed in the floodplain.
So then, would you happen to know what is the elevation? And I'm sorry if I asked you this and I didn't write it down.
No problem.
What is the elevation of the floodway?
Floodways don't have an elevation per se.
Okay.
Everything is based on the 100-year flood
Right.
elevation.
So you're at 865.7. Okay.
You could round up to 866, but
Okay.
and so we work hand in hand with FEMA in this process. So we receive their models that they use to develop the floodplain boundaries. WSB, the city's third-party consultant, is working with FEMA directly on a general study of Stillwater Creek. So we've been involved in coordinating with them and being sure that not only is our proposed work being reviewed by WSB, but it's in alignment with other studies that WSB has ongoing, so that they're aware, they've approved what we've done. We went through several rounds of review comments with them and have approval from the city as well as WSB on the flood study.
What time frame is the data set taken from that determines the 100-year floodplain or floodway that you are using?
I can't answer that specifically because I'm not sure. That's a good question. I will say the city provided drone footage of I believe it's the 2020 event. Sorry if I've got that exact year incorrect. I apologize. Somewhere in that range. And we correlated those elevations that were experienced with our survey, and it appeared to align within a foot plus or minus of the FEMA 100-year flood elevation that I mentioned. For context on where our building will be relative to other surrounding buildings that were there at that time, the total health, the small building to our west, immediately to our west, it is at an elevation of 868. So our YMCA building will be 1 foot above that. The drone footage that I saw from the city of the 2020, or the event that happened around that year.
2019.
Thank you, sir. That building was not inundated. It reached into its parking lot. So that's why we went an extra foot above the minimum, a foot and several inches above the minimum threshold or bar that the city sets of being 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like, are there two structures that we're looking at?
So the application before you this evening is purely for rezoning. The city's
Okay.
asked for the concept site plan. The building that is in permit review currently is just the YMCA building. So that's the structure here. And then the parking lot, primarily to its south.
Okay.
This building you see here is a future building that has not started design yet. The Y and the landowner who's donating the property desired to mass grade the entire property that before you tonight for rezoning approval because it all drains together, and the borrow pit will be used to raise all the building pad sites that you see here. It's more cost effective to do it together instead of in pieces from a mass grading perspective.
Gotcha. Other questions for the applicant?
Yes, so CG is our city's broadest commercial category. And if the Y decided to not go forward, if we approve the zoning change, it could do just about anything, and anything could happen on that property. But wouldn't public also meet the needs of the YMCA?
We coordinated significantly with the planning department, and I will say the staff has been a fantastic partner throughout this project, Henry, David, and others. And my understanding, and would be happy to.
I can chime in. Public has to
Thank
be
you.
owned by the city
Okay.
or the
And
university.
it's not, yeah.
And this would not be owned by the city.
Thank you. You beat me to it.
So owned by a governmental agency.
Yep. So CG is the one it has to be in order to take the Y.
Henry's coming. Hold on, Henry.
Yes, sir. The reason we recommended CG or commercial general was because the use was recreation, which would allow for the existing YMCA building as well as the potential soccer complex to the south.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we don't have a very specific use category for something like the Y, so we had to kind of fit it into the one that was closest to it, which was recreation, which is allowed in very few zoning districts. So that's why we recommended commercial general.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So at this time, we'd open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this item to come forward. Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward? Is that for favor or just? So if you're in, I'll ask for in favor first, and then I'll ask for opposition later. And if you're on the fence, then feel free to come forward. That's fine. Please come forward. If you can just state your name and address for the record for our.
I'm Wayne Smith, and my address is 1724 South Husband Street. I live down in this area. I'm 300 feet from what we're talking about here. When I look at the map, I see a lot of things that I don't quite see and understand about keeping the flood under control in that area. Probably what I really want to say first, that I'm 83 years old, and I'm probably one of the oldest ones here, but I lived through all the different floods. I own the property since about 1964. So I went through the big floods. We had the one that's, 5 or 6 years ago. That was probably, I would say, at least a 100-year flood. Mm-hmm. I was up on the hill. The highway patrolman came by, and I said, how high is this going to get up there where the fire station was? He said, it may get up here. But the thing that saved us was flood control. And we have about 80 flood control structures between here and Blackville. If we hadn't had those structures in here, they would have been probably 10 foot high. It was that bad. And these structures are very important. I want to see the YMCA go in down here. I think it's a good location. But what I would like to see is a better control of the water coming out. We've got Duck Creek. I'm 3 sides with the city, 3 sides of me. So I've worked with the city a lot over the years on different things. I have one of the big sewer lines that goes through my property, so that I've had to give them right away on that. I had to sell them 4 acres, put the Duck Creek project in down here, which was a good project. It's helped a lot. But the city has been very good, and the engineers have been very good about doing the right thing. And I think this is another instance where this is kind of a gray area, but question mark. I think it needs to be done right. I agree with you on flood control. I like to see flood control on it. I do have some issues with the city on some things I'll talk to them later about, but I think they owe me one probably for all the times I've helped them out. But anyway, I think we're on the right track. Our forefathers and Harley Thomas and all those I've worked with in the past. I haven't been on this board, but I've been on several other boards on the city that's because of where I'm located. And I would love for somebody to come and ask me anything they want to know about the flood zones, since I've been there 60 years. And I have a lot of information, and I've got a good mind still at 83. So I'd be glad to share that with you. I'd like to talk to an engineer or two about something down there that I think we need to fix. But like I say, I'm on the line, and I'd love to have the YMCA in. All my kids were raised there. I had 3 children, doctors, lawyers, nurses, RNs. They've all been done well. Stillwater's my home. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be buried right out here probably. But I want to see what's best for Stillwater. That's my goal. It's not me as much as it is for the town. So it's a beautiful place to live. I think we're very fortunate. Every time I turn the TV on, you know, we see floods and disasters everywhere. We don't have that here hardly. Flooding isn't terrible as long as we keep it under control. I like what we've got here on the YMCA, but I'd like to see, I walked up through there today again because it's been a while since I've been there. I went through all the flood control ponds we've got behind all the hospital and everything out here. Those are great. That holds back a lot of water. And to say really that the water coming off, let's get it in the creek first. If you've got a full creek going on already and the banks are full and you run that water on into the creek and you're not holding it, and I think those ponds we put in up there behind those medical offices and stuff might have saved us 6 years ago. Because I really think without those, that water could have been another 2 or 3 feet. It didn't get in my property, but my main house down here, it's an old homestead, and I spent a lot of money fixing it all up, and it's rental property now, but it came right up to where it was that far from getting in the house. But that really kind of saved that. And I could tell for the years I've lived there that Stillwater is a fantastic place to live. And I hand it to the engineers. The engineers done a great job in town. I look at a lot of their other projects. I kind of go around now since I've been retired a long time just to kind of see what everything's going on what Stillwater is doing. And it's a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this item, to please come forward. Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anybody in opposition of this to come forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And I don't know that I necessarily heard any questions Mr. Smith generated that were different than the ones that the commission did. I'll give the applicant an opportunity to come forward. If you'd like to address his comments, thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. The one thing I forgot to mention, I would like to add, the borrow pit I mentioned before. The only work being completed in the floodway is a drainage structure that's connecting the borrow pit to the creek itself. The reason that's significant, that structure will be very large. It'll be an 8-foot wide by 4-foot tall reinforced concrete box. And the purpose of that structure is to allow the creek, when it begins to flood, to back up into the borrow pit. I mentioned, without getting into too many details, I'm happy to get into details if you like, the bottom of the borrow pit is approximately 848. The bottom of the creek is about 845. So our borrow pit will be just a few feet, the bottom of the borrow pit was just a few feet above the bottom of the creek. So very quickly, as that creek begins to rise in a flood event, we have effectively broadened the creek significantly with this borrow pit. That's part of our solution here with the flood study. It's how we were able to develop the site, add pavement to the site, but not have any negative upstream or downstream impact by effectively creating creek working volume at a much deeper elevation than it is currently within that borrow pit area. Hope that makes sense and perhaps gives a little bit of peace of mind.
So then, if I understand then that the bottom of the borrow pit is such that it would be completely drained and drain into the creek and shouldn't be retaining water in it when the creek starts backing up.
That's correct.
In
when
theory.
the creek begins to empty
Right.
after a flood event, yes, the borrow pit is not intended to hold water permanently. As the creek drops during a flood event, so will the borrow pit. They're intended. The structure is so large, and this was something we coordinated closely with WSB, something they wanted to see. That structure is so large to allow the creek and the borrow pit to function in unison, if you will.
And then whose responsibility is it to make sure that that stays free of debris?
Sure. So as part of the project, all the trees, existing trees on the property will be cleared. Certainly be new trees that will go back that could have some on-site debris, if you will. There's could be debris in the creek as an 8x4 box that's as large as boxes that are nearby underneath public streets. So maintenance of that, I believe, would be on the property owner, the YMCA, but I imagine the city would be a partner in that. I don't want to speak for the city. I don't know if David or Henry have comment, but as the city also shares the ownership of flood protection for its constituents, I believe that would be a shared responsibility.
Responsibility?
In regards, the question was the box structure that's connecting the borrow pit.
Well, and the borrow
floodway.
pit itself, whose responsibility is it to keep that drainage area free of debris?
I mean, it would be the property owners. So the property owner is going to own the barrel pit. They're going to maintain it, they have to mow it, keep trees out of it, whatever. And same thing with the drainage structures, those would be theirs to maintain. We maintain drainage structures that are in the public right of way, but not on private property.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Yep. All right. So we'd ask staff to come forward with findings and alternatives.
Yes, ma'am. The findings tonight are that the proposed recreation facility is allowed by right in the CG or Commercial General Zoning District. The YMCA development generally aligns with the future land use map of Envision Stillwater 2045. Your alternatives tonight are to recommend the City Council approve or deny the proposed map amendment, as well as to table it. Staff recommends alternative number 1, which is to accept findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed map amendment as presented.
Thank you.
Well, the only concern I have really is if the YMCA ends up not building there, then it's just wide open to whatever under CG, but don't know how to address that actually.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that too, and I had a similar thought as you, Commissioner Prathers, if it could be public, and that way there might be a little bit more control over what went in there. I know that there's development in the floodplain all across the U.S. We've got it in our city. I just don't feel like it's a best practice. So it's difficult for me to get there thinking that if this were to be general commercial, and I know they'd still have to go through and meet all of our city requirements, regulations, and I think it's been very worthwhile to have this conversation this evening on what the regulations are that are in the interest of public safety and protection of property. So I think it's been a very worthwhile discussion, but I have a hesitancy too for a commercial general or general CG, yeah, commercial general.
I don't think it would.
We've already closed the public hearing. You go ahead.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt any public comment. I was just going to say that it won't do this particular proposal or development any good, but it might be wise, looking at the land development code, if something can be expanded in the definition of P zoning to include something like this, so we don't have to rely on a commercial general designation.
We are currently looking at our zoning districts and to reclassify that now. Right now, that's where we're rewriting Chapter 23.
Right.
Is there a path to limit CG use via an overlay?
Excuse that again, sorry?
Is there a path to limit CG use via an overlay?
PUD or planned unit development would be
Yeah,
the path to
PUD.
kind of limit those allowed uses. I believe that's the only tool we have to say we will approve the rezoning, but only with these specific uses would be a PUD or planned unit development.
Okay.
And I'm gonna ask the next question, even though I think I already know the answer. Is PUD allowed on public zoning?
It is not,
For-
but that's
okay.
also because public zoning, I mean, I guess it is technically, but public zoning doesn't really have a list of
It
allowed
wouldn't really
uses.
be needed
Right,
if it was public.
right.
So, I mean, it would be allowed, but there really wouldn't be a necessity for that.
Gotcha. I just wanted to ask the question since it seemed like we were going down that path.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, thinking about the rezoning it to CG and worrying that, oh, if the YMCA didn't build there, then it's just CG. That's kind of the scenario that we have anytime that we're rezoning anything for any development. So I don't feel like it's always a concern.
Well, and I think when we looked at what the comprehensive plan has, it listed. Let's see. I thought I made a note. Henry, can you remind me what it had listed?
Yes, it has it listed as public or
Public
civic.
and civic.
Yes,
So I think the former comprehensive plan, recognized that this is an area that needs to be pretty careful in how it's developed and what makes sense to go in this area. And so I think when it's, public or civic, that gives pause to what gets developed in that area.
And just for your consideration, I did pull up the table of allowed uses just so you could see what other zoning districts, if the use were recreation, could be considered. For the use of recreation, it's allowed in O or office with a specific use permit. It's allowed by right in CB, which is commercial business, which is kind of the downtown zoning district generally. And then it's allowed in CG or commercial general by right, and then A or agriculture with a specific use permit.
So we do have office adjacent.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then I think it would be, for me, it'd be a matter of looking at what the uses were in office to see how that aligns with the civic designation from the previous comp plan.
And just for the clarification, the current comp plan calls for civic and or public.
Okay, and that's what I'm thinking is looking at what the previous comp, or what the, sorry, the current comp plan.
Okay. And I do have those allowed uses pulled up on the screen if we can share those. I don't, you guys probably can't see it. Let me see if I can zoom in. I don't know how to zoom in, sorry. Where did I end up? Sorry. There we go. That would be with the specific use permit we have recreation. But I'll scroll back up so you can see all that. I do have a clarification. I'm going to go ahead and ask Kim, our legal counsel. I believe with this rezoning request, Planning Commission could recommend a different zoning district, but they couldn't recommend a specific use permit because that would have to go through a notice and application requirement. Is that correct?
It's my belief that they would have to recommend either approval or denial of this zoning from RSS and AG to CG. I mean, the property owner would have to be the one that would have to request it to be rezoned O or other categories.
Okay. Thank you.
They could, planning commission members can establish that in the minutes that they make a recommendation that the applicant applies for a different zoning classification, but the question before them is it appropriate to zone to CG?
Okay.
Well, I think Commissioner Williams has a good point that typically that's the case, is we can't control what happens necessarily after something's rezoned. So, I mean, if the YMCA goes forward with the plans, which it seems like they would, then it's not a problem.
Well, and that, I think I think that's kind of the crux of what we're all stubbing our toes on here on the zoning designation, because the YMCA use really seems to be more of kind of that civic public, because it is while it's a nonprofit and it's not owned by a state agency or a city or a governmental agency, it provides a service to the community. So I think that when we're thinking that it's a civic use, and that kind of fits with the previous or with our current comp plan. Going to commercial general here does not follow the comp plan. And I think that's where I'm having a little bit of a disconnect with this. And I understand how we got here. I mean, everyone got here in good faith. I just don't know that that's really the right answer for me, at least looking at this moving forward.
Council, can we do anything with a PUD recommendation?
Tonight, the question is whether or not the map amendment is appropriate to rezone this property to CG. However, you can establish on the record minutes of what you would like to see or recommend. But the question is, the vote would be whether or not CG is appropriate.
So I'm curious if you're thinking that this is not the right answer, because the way I'm seeing it is the YMCA at this location would be a good use in agreement with the comprehensive plan. But because of the way that our code is written, the use needs to be with the CG or a different lesser zoning.
So I mean,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
So I'm just asking what would be your...
Personally, I have two issues. One, I philosophically think it's not a good practice to develop floodplain regardless of what the zoning would be, period.
Okay.
Beyond that, I'm looking at our comprehensive plan, and our comprehensive plan says public or civic in this area, not commercial general.
But you think that the YMCA fits a public or civic?
It appears
to some
to
degree,
me, yeah,
but-
because of the ultimate service it's providing for the community.
Right.
Even though it's not a publicly owned, it's not a governmental agency, it does provide that community service.
But because of the way that it's
The
set
way-
up, we can't zone it public.
Currently, the way that we have things in our land development code, we don't have a straightforward path to this. From where I stand. Now,
I see what you're saying.
There's four other people here. So that's my thought.
I know, I was just trying to wrap my head
Right,
around
sure.
your thought process there.
I hope that's I did that in a way that's clear.
I do understand, yes.
Okay.
I think my opinion is that the YMCA is a good use there of that land. The way that our code is currently set up pretty much puts us at commercial general or a lesser, with them having to get a specific use permit. As far as the floodplain goes, I understand thinking that it's just not the best practice. However, for me, we do have guidelines set up and engineering set up to allow that to happen, and it appears that they have gone through the work to make that happen. So unless there is a office, or what was the other zoning usage that was said?
So,
I
yeah.
thought he said agriculture. Did you say that?
Agricultural, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It was office or agriculture with a specific use
To
permit.
allow recreation.
Yes, ma'am. Or CB, which is the commercial business, or CG with by right.
Yeah, so unless we think that one of those with a specific use permit would be better, then I think that this is the best option.
Yeah, I don't know that agricultural would allow the building of the structure, because agriculture only allows like accessory structures. Is that correct?
You would be allowed to do this in agriculture with a specific use permit, because the specific use permit would allow you to do the recreation use. Just like right now, if your property is zoned agriculture, you can still build a house on it.
The like a building structure and associated parking, if it was in a special use permit, would be allowed in agriculture?
I'd have to look at other technicalities, like for example, the lot coverage I think is a lot lower in agriculture, so that's something that if you were to go that route might need to be in a PUD or planned
Okay.
unit development to change some of those rules. Because the specific use permit can only allow the use, it can't change the regulations.
Gotcha.
But can't say off the top of my head whether that would work or not.
Okay.
While being sensitive to these concerns, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion and see what happens. So I'd like to move that we accept the findings, recommend that the City Council approve the proposed map amendment as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Motion passes 4-1. Next item on the agenda is to receive public comment regarding a text amendment, and that's text 26-03. We shall hear from staff.
Yes, ma'am. This is a text amendment to amend the allowed uses in the CB or commercial business zoning district. We'll get into all those technicalities in a second. Here's the definition. We're not proposing to change this definition. I just wanted to make it clear what we were talking about tonight. So I'll go ahead and read that definition. We have vehicle, equipment, sales, rental, and service means establishments primarily engaged in the sale or rental of personal or commercial vehicles and equipment, and which includes incidental maintenance and repair facilities, and establishments that sell, install, and service vehicle equipment and parts, including body repairs and painting. So that is the general use that we're talking about tonight, is that definition. This is the CB or commercial business district allowed uses. We have a list of all of the uses permitted by right, which I'm not necessarily going to go through. I'll just leave this on the screen for a second. We're proposing to add vehicle and equipment sales, rental, and service as a specific use permit. As some context while you kind of look through those uses if you would like. Whenever we were preparing for this, we found 5 different uses in the CB zoning district, which is primarily around the downtown. One of the key components of the CB or commercial business zoning district is reduced setbacks. A lot of times there's a 0-foot setback. Picturing these downtown buildings, the buildings abut each other.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of times there's exceptions for parking to allow you to do public parking for the site instead of parking on site being required, are just different exceptions that kind of make the CB zoning district unique. So while we were looking at the CB zoning district, there are 5 current uses that would fit into this category that are currently in the CB zoning district. So this proposed text amendment would allow them a path forward to compliance. It would not at all require any of them to come into compliance. This would just be relevant if they were to, for example, move locations to another property that's also zoned CB, or if they were to expand their existing location. As a non-conforming use, you are allowed to be a non-conforming use. That's allowed to stay there. We're never going to kick you out. I guess I can't say never, but we're not going to kick you out with this text amendment. But you're not allowed to increase the nonconformity, which means you wouldn't be able to expand that use. So this is just to allow that a path forward. We decided to go with specific use permit because it does still require that any one of those uses that wanted to be allowed in CB would have to come before Planning Commission and City Council for a public hearing. There's also a very long list of conditions that are allowed to be recommended by Planning Commission and set by City Council for a specific use permit. So it would allow adequate safeguards to be put in place to make sure that any proposed uses in the future would be appropriate for the proposed location. With all that, I'm open to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, just to make sure I understand, from the table that you had up on the screen, did that, this particular use that we're talking about, was it in the permitted by right and it's moving over, or it just didn't exist at all?
No, sir. Right now, it's not allowed at all in the CB zoning category, so it's
Okay.
being added in for a specific
gotcha.
use. Thank you for clarifying. I should have pointed that out.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, you said you found 5 that exist. Just to give me an idea of what we're talking about, what are a couple of them?
I don't know if I should name names or not. There's a couple of mechanics, one right off Lewis, one on Main Street, kind of on the corner of Main. There's a different mechanic further south on Main Street, as well as I believe it was like a used car dealership, kind of west on Main. CB goes a little further west than you might picture downtown.
Okay.
So also on 6th are
Gotcha.
some of those uses.
Yeah, thanks. That helps.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. All right, so at this time, we'd open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this item to please come forward. Seeing none, we'll ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition of this item to please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask staff to present findings and alternatives.
Yes, ma'am. The findings tonight are that the proposed text amendment provides a potential path forward for the existing vehicle and equipment sales and service to come into compliance, and the proposed text amendment allows City Council to review and impose conditions on any request for vehicle service, sales, and service within the CB zoning district. Your options tonight are to approve the text amendment, conditionally approve the text amendment, to table the request, or to recommend the City Council deny the request. Staff recommends alternative number 1, which is to accept findings and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendment.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion to accept the findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed text amendment to Section 23-152.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the meeting summary for review and possible action. We have the regular meeting summary from January 27th. Does anyone have any corrections or additions?
I don't have any additions or corrections. I was going to wait and do something after you're done with that.
Okay, very good.
So I move we accept the commission meetings as provided.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Motion passes 5-0. So the next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items from staff, planning commissioners, or city attorney for discussion and possible action.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce real quick Ann Kalina. Ann is a new civil engineer in development services, and she's not new to Stillwater, she's relatively new to Stillwater. She has been in the engineering department for the last, 6-7 months, and she has now joined development services. So she will be reviewing all of the improvement plans, drainage studies, flood studies, all the good stuff that, some of it which we've been outsourcing and some of it I've had to do. And so thankfully we have Ann, who is a tenured civil engineer. She comes from earlier stints in Conroe, Texas and Waco. And so we're really excited to have her. So.
Wonderful. Welcome. Anything else? Okay. We do have our next regular meeting on Tuesday, March 3rd, and the last item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Motion passes 5-0. We stand adjourned.